Good afternoon, everybody out there. This is Arjax coming at you again with another tanking guide. So this dungeon is a fairly simple dungeon, and it gets a little bit of a bad rep because you're going to end up running it over and over again throughout your time and leveling. I found that, I like to go the fastest way. So the method I'm going to show you here is the jump off and use the parachute method. So that's what I'm doing here. Now there is some disadvantage to this. A lot of times DPS will forget to deploy their parachute, fall and die, or fall and aggro somebody that you haven't aggroed before, and so that's what happened there. The DPS fell right in front of the boss, and the boss basically one-hitted them. Now overall, it's not too much of a big deal. We're going to be able to down this, and there wasn't too much pulled here, and what was pulled was primarily pulled by me. So fairly easy to run through this. We're going to have to res somebody, but not an overall big deal. So the method that I'm doing here with this dungeon is I'm just going to run through the fastest way possible, not doing the full dungeon. I'm not doing the full dungeon because it's a big time sink. I mean, you're going to get more EXP by doing that, but I think you get actually more EXP for your time by just running through the dungeon and completing it with the random EXP bonus that you get for completing the dungeon. Now, if you guys want me to run through this entire dungeon for the run-through guide, let me know and I'd be happy to do that. I just don't think that there is a big need or want for that information. So that's what I'm just gonna run through this as fast as possible in order to give you guys the fastest, quickest possible way to do it. Now, you're not gonna miss any quests by doing it this way. There is a turn-in for an item and you get EXP for that, but you have to fight a bunch of mobs, and it's not really that big of a deal, and you're not going to miss out on that much EXP. So, this dungeon is fairly quick. Right here, I didn't necessarily have to pull those guys, but I wanted to pull them just so that they weren't aggroed by the DPS and I'd have to go back. So that was the primary concern with that, was I didn't want to pull those and not have the DPS, or have the DPS pull them rather, and me not be there, because that's going to cause people to die and it's just going to be more aggravation than it's worth. Sometimes I won't pull as many guys as I did here, not because it's hard, but because of the DPSing on them, and it might pull off from you. So that was a pretty decent pull. The DPS here isn't really doing that, so that's why I just went ahead and pulled the bigger group like that. Fairly easy. I did bring them back and regroup them, because as a tank you're going to be doing a lot of AoE damage, and that's going to help progress it. So the adds in this are fairly easy. You shouldn't really have to worry about wiping on the adds too much if you have a decent healer and you have full heirlooms. Without full heirlooms, you're going to want to take this a bit slower, but there's really no excuse not to have heirlooms at this point in WoW. It is very easy to obtain. So these mobs, like before, they're pretty easy, so I'm pulling a bigger group of them. Shouldn't really matter too much as the amount of adds that you're pulling here. You're going to be able to get through them pretty quickly, so that's why I like to pull bigger groups. As a tank, I can really take advantage of my AoE damage and pull everybody together and move along rather quickly. So as you see, I'm pulling 2-3 different groups of adds. I count that big guy as his own group because he's independent of the adds. But it's fairly simple, so I'm just gonna DPS him down. We're almost to the next boss. I actually do pull, I believe, an extra group of adds that I could have skipped. I just got a bit overzealous, I guess. So, maybe, I don't know. So I pulled them and I put a bit of DPS? Yes. So this is the group of ads that I pulled that I didn't need to. We could have really just skipped those and gone to the boss. I didn't mean to pull them. Well, I did actually intentionally pull them. I didn't realize that the boss stairs was right there. So we wasted a bit of time here killing those ads. So up here is the boss. And the boss, this guy is really simple. All the bosses in this are really simple. To the right there is the parachute. You're going to want to grab that because the parachutes are a one-time use and you don't have your parachute from before. So you're going to end up jumping off here, and that's why the parachute's there. And without the parachute, you fall and do damage. You know, and sometimes I will accidentally forget it or forget to deploy it. It's not going to kill you the fall, but if you fall into ads, it definitely is not going to be a good day. So right there is where your parachute is. So I grab it and I make sure that I'm ready to deploy it. I jump off here and down I go. I'm falling into the correct placement for where to go with for the quickest way through the dungeon. So if you go down this path, it is going to be the quickest way to get through the dungeon. Now there are a couple other bosses that I do skip in this. Like I said before, you don't need to do them. They do give you decent EXP and they're simple enough to do. It's just the time of it that is a little long. So like I said, this is just the fastest way through the dungeon, and I'm not necessarily doing it the fastest that we could, because I've done this dungeon before in like 3 to 4 minutes, but it was with the guild run and everybody was in full heirlooms and we just blazed through it. But you know, this is a random pickup group. You're not going to get the same success that you are with a dedicated guild run and people that you know and that you've run dungeons with before. That was something that I used to do, was with guildies, we'd all start at the same level, full heirlooms, and run through all the way to 90. Well, it was 85 at the time. But nonetheless, that's not what we're doing here. With a full guild run, it would certainly be easier, especially if you know the people that are running with you and you got raid call set up or Skype or TeamSpeak or something. But definitely don't have that here, so it's not as fast as it could be done. All these dungeons, if you're running with a dedicated group, are going to be significantly faster. But, you know, if that's not what you're running, that's not what you're running. So we're almost to the final group here, and as you can see, we haven't struggled whatsoever in these dungeons. And this is, like I said, random pickup group. So I think I could have actually run this a little bit farther, faster, and pulled bigger groups, but as a tank, you really definitely do not want to overpull, because you don't want to wipe. And wiping is pretty much the worst thing possible. People dying is the worst thing possible. As a tank, you gotta be prepared to take responsibility for your mistakes. I've been into a lot of groups where the tank isn't necessarily experienced and I'm running as DPS, and I'll be the first to admit that my DPS isn't great, but, you know, the tank dies and he's blaming the healer, he's blaming the DPS, everybody's blaming everybody, and everybody's mad, and it doesn't become productive, you know. So as a tank, you know, if somebody dies, sometimes, you know, it might not be my fault, but I'll say, hey guys, I'm sorry, didn't mean for that to happen, don't know what happened there. Because a lot of times I really don't know what happened, and it could have been my fault because I might have missed somebody. Other times the DPS does something stupid, like they want to go faster, so they run around and they grab a bunch of stuff. But either way, I will apologize because it just definitely makes the group run faster. And as a tank, you really don't have to be worried about kicking or getting kicked out of a dungeon group, especially if you're nice and cordial. You're like, hey guys, sorry about that mistake, and everybody's going to move past it. So this is the final boss here. He summons these little bombs, and realistically you can pretty much ignore them. I pretty much do. They don't do a whole lot of damage, and it's just going to take DPS off of the boss to go grab them, because as soon as they die, they do a little bit of damage, and when the boss dies, they disappear. So that's the dungeon video. If you guys liked it, please comment, like below, and subscribe. If you don't, let me know. If there's something I could do better, definitely let me know, because I'm always open to learning. Arjax out.